A covered cart drawn by 2 oxen was moving slowly across the steppe. A saddled horse was walking behind the cart. The hot sun hung over the scorched steppe. Exhausted by the heat, the oxen walked with their heads downcast. Midges swirled over their wet backs. The stalks of a grasshopper rustled dryly under the wheels. Holin was sitting in the back of the wagon. Drops of sweat rolled down her childishly rounded face and fell on the hem of the silk robe, her wedding outfit. Holin's eyes were wide open, but she did not see the gray panicles of Darison, nor the lonely cloud over the steppe. She did not feel the heat. She was far away from here, where her mother and brothers, her childhood games and amusements remained. Many Olkanut tribesmen gathered to see her off. They sang songs, joked, competed in wit. Everyone had fun, she too. She always loved holidays, and this was her holiday. In her honor, in honor of her fiancé, songs and magnificent well-wishes were composed. Her relatives were famous for their cheerful disposition, songs and beautiful girls. For many days on the way, sometimes even from the shores of unknown Lake Baikal, sometimes from the Great Wall, the limit of the kingdom of Chinese Altan Khan, they came to them for brides. The first day of the journey passed unnoticed. She recalled the farewell feast, hummed songs composed in her honor to herself, and stole glances at her fiancé. She liked him, her boyfriend. He was tall, sturdy, with an open, friendly face. She knew he wouldn't offend in vain and wouldn't give offense. This day was like a continuation of the holiday for Holin. But in the evening, when they stopped for the night and Chiledu told her to cook dinner, she somehow immediately, in an instant, realized a drastic change in her life, realized that she had left her native Nutug, nomad, not for a day, not for two, forever. She felt so sad that, forgetting about dinner, she sat down on the ground, covered her face with her hands, and wept bitterly. Chiledu blinked in surprise, bent over her, ran his hand over her head, said nothing. She did not give way to tears, wiped her eyes with the hem of her robe, and began to make a fire. But the longing did not leave my heart. Her carefree life was over. Now she has to cook food, sew clothes, saddle her husband's horse, drive a cart during migrations. Chiledu did not bother her with conversations. His broad face was calmly affectionate all the time. A sympathetic smile shone in his narrow, guileless eyes. And she was grateful to him for that smile, for his silence. And now, sitting in the back of the wagon, with her back to Chiled, she could feel his eyes on the back of her head. All the time it seemed that the groom wanted to say something, but she did not want to talk at all, and she sat without turning around. "Holin," he called. She turned her head slightly. "Do you want kumis, Holin?" Only now did she feel that her mouth was dry from the heat. She nodded silently. Chiledu poured kumis into a wooden cup from a wineskin placed in the cart by her mother. The kumis was warm and sour. It made my nose tingle. "Onan will be here soon," Chiledu said, tying the wineskin. "We'll feed the oxen and the horse by the water, rest until evening. We'll go on at night. It's cooler and safer." On this day, Chiledu kept a bow with a war arrow on his lap all the time, and next to him, at hand, lay a naked sword with a handle made of horn from a tiger. "What kind of danger is there?" Without interest to say anything, she asked. "There is a thin tribe roaming here. We Merkits are at odds with this tribe all the time. We fought recently. They killed our lord Tudur Bilge and severely wounded his son Toktobeki." Chiledu spoke, anxiously peering into the steppe. But there was not a soul around. Only occasionally gophers called to each other in the stunted grass. Soon the terrain became noticeably lower, and the ground was not so dry and hard. Ahead, blurring in the hot, trembling air, a dark ridge of tallow bushes appeared. The oxen, sensing the water, went faster. Chiledu's horse raised his head and pricked his ears. In a wide meadow, in the shade of a shrub, Chiledu unhitched the oxen and hobbled the horse. Holin sat down on the shore. Blinding glare flashed on the river. The waves sobbed softly near the frozen shore. Chiledu sat down next to her and put his hand on her shoulder. "Don't be sad, Hoylen. We'll be fine, you'll see. My family is not rich or noble, but I can work and shoot accurately. There are many animals on Selenga. I will try, Hoylen, to make your life no worse than in the yurt of the most noble Noyon." Hoylen listened in silence, looking into the water of Onon. Streams of sand flowed along the bottom without stirring up clean water and trickled down. Chiledu's unhurried, thoughtful speech was soothing. Hoylen tried to imagine her life there, on the banks of the Selenga, in the nomads of the Merkits, but nothing came of it. She saw the same thing in front of her. Yurts by a bright lake, bordered by tall thickets of reeds. Sparsely grassy steppes with white patches of salt marshes, gujirs, the native Nutug of the Olkanuts. Is Selenga the same as Onon? "What is it?" she asked. "A lot more. A rare bagatur is able to throw an arrow from a bow from one bank to the other." Chiledu broke dry talnik sticks, struck a fire with a chair, but immediately extinguished it, looking around warily. "Are you afraid?" Hoylen asked. "The smoke is visible far away," Chiledu replied evasively, frowning. She felt that he did not want to look like a coward in her eyes. She said, "We'll do without fire." Chiledu stubbornly jerked his head. "No, we'll make a fire." He struck the flint again with his glass. Chiledu spread Tagan's hiking tripod over the fire and hung a pot of water on it. He did all this deftly, quickly, without fearful glances, and Hoylen thought that the eternal blue sky had sent her a good groom. Chiledu threw off his robe, sat on the grass naked to the waist. A mottled shadow stained his swarthy skin. Smiling blissfully, he followed Hoylen's every movement. The horse, cropping the grass, suddenly raised its head and neighed invitingly. An answering whinny came from behind the tallow bushes. Chiledu jumped up, rushed to the cart, grabbed a bow and sword, returned to the fire, picked up Hoylen, pushed into the cart, and closed the curtain. Hoylen had no fear. She pulled back the curtain a little and looked out. A lone horseman on a white-legged red horse rode out into the meadow. He was wearing a robe of coarse woolen cloth, but his weapons, a curved saber, a quiver with arrows, were decorated with silver, and the saddle and bridle were carved with copper plates. Hoylen was surprised that the naked head of the rider matched the color of his horse's suit, red. The small pigtails tucked behind her ears gleamed as if they were cast from copper. She had never seen people with red hair before, and his eyes are not like all people's, not brown or black, but gray-green. Maybe it's not a person? Then who is it? The spirit of good or evil? Without taking his wary gaze off Chiledu, the rider greeted him in a strained voice. Chiledu replied indistinctly, his hands clutching the bow, ready to pull the string at any moment. The horseman, having looked around the clearing and, apparently, having made sure that there was no one else here, calmed down, mockingly asked, "Why are you bristling? Where did this come from?" "From afar." Chiledu muttered, lowered his bow, and sat down by the fire. "Merkit?" the horseman asked. "Yes. It's obvious right away. Anyone else would invite a guest to taste food, refresh themselves with kumis. This is the custom of the steppe people. Ancient customs are not for you, arrogant Merkits. And does the ancient custom tell you, guest, to pester with questions?" Chiledu said sullenly. "Sit down. I'll pour you some kumis." The horseman laughed. "That's where I'd start. But I won't drink your kumis, Merkit. What are you doing here, so far from your Nutug? Who sent you here? What for?" The horseman bent down, abruptly pulled back the curtain and looked into the carriage. "Wow!" Hoylen saw his surprised eyes very close by and moved away. "What's your name, beautiful girl?" "Hoylen," she replied unfriendly. "What a cloud you are!" His white, even teeth flashed in a wide smile. You are not a cloud, you are a thundercloud. And my name, beauty, is Yesuge." He turned to Chiled. "If this is your sister, Merkit, heaven knows, I am ready to become your son-in-law." He put his hands on his hips. "She's my fiancée." "The bride?" The smile slowly drained from his face. It became hard. "Nevista, well, take her home." He looked at Hoylen again. "If your fiancé ever takes up arms against us, you will remain a widow. Know this. And you, the groom, remember my words." He yanked on the reins and rode off without once looking back. Chiledu watched him go, hastily wiping his sweaty forehead. After eating something, they harnessed the oxen. While they were packing, Chiledu kept looking around, listening, muttering, "Damn you, red-headed jackal!" He calmed down a little when the ridge of Talos and the hotly shining bend of Onan were left behind. "Do you know this man?" Hoylen asked. "I know his tribe. There are no bullies and bullies like these Taichiutes in the whole steppe." "Why aren't his hair and eyes black? Are they all like that?" "Not all of them. They have one genus of redheads. They consider red hair and gray eyes to be a sign of their divine origin." "Did you hear him talking to me? It's not just because the Taichiutes beat our tribe. These redheads consider all people in the world to be inferior to themselves. Why, they were created by heaven itself." Chiledu took out his anger on the bulls. He whipped both of them with a whip, and dark stripes lay on their sweaty backs. "How is it created by the sky?" Looking at her, Chiledu relented. "I heard from the old people that many, many years ago, the ruler of Bargujan Tokum had a beautiful daughter, Bargujan Goa. She was married to Koriltai Mergen from the Hori Tumatov tribe. They had a daughter, Alangoa. Koriltai, along with his wife and daughter, migrated to these places. Alangoa married Doban Mergen. Doban died soon after, leaving a young wife with 2 sons. That's where the miracles begin. There is no husband, but Alangoa gives birth to 1, 2nd, 3rd son. "How is that?" they ask her. Alangoa says that every evening, as soon as it gets dark and the stars light up in the sky, a ray of light penetrates into her yurt through a smoke hole and turns into a blond young man. He has children from him. Our old people say something else. Not through the smoke hole, but through the canopy of the yurt. Not a ray of light, but a rootless Malik worker penetrated to Alangoa at night. Chiledu fell silent, peering keenly at the gray-yellow plain of the endless steppe.